Hello there, Reject Nation. I am Sir Gregory Alba.
And I am Lord Jonald of House Humphrey.
We are going to do another video podcast for you guys. We just like the microphones that much.
We like the sound of our voices.
One of our top reward tiers at Patreon is whatever video you request we must do and put up on the YouTubes. And today comes from the man who got the very first ever Real Rejects tattoo. The biggest life regret anyone will ever have. Eric Horstman. He was a little bit kind of confusing on the kind of topic. I mean, we did a topic like this a while ago, art versus the artist, that kind of thing. But he was basically saying something about how we tend to overlook and or forgive certain behaviors from celebrities because of who they are. So that's pretty much the topic we're going to do today. We won't talk for too long. I feel like because it's a podcast, we feel like we have to talk forever.
At least an hour.
To make it a podcast, we got to talk for way too long. I'll start off by saying this, something that I didn't bring up in the art versus the artist video. It does nothing for me as an individual. I don't think it matters. Let's say someone's accused of a heinous crime, whether it be sexual abuse, something like that, as we've all seen. And when someone comes out and says, I was close to this person, and they didn't demonstrate any of this behavior, so I don't believe it. Or, no, I dated this person. They didn't do that to me, so I don't believe it. To me, that doesn't really factor in terms of facts because every relationship is different. I've been in some I've been in some relationships that I would consider like, yeah, on both sides, that was a pretty abusive relationship. Then I've been in like the relationship I'm in now. I'm like by far nowhere near an abusive relationship. I'm the same. I'm Greg in both relationships, but I'm like,
you develop over time, and different mixtures of people create different dynamics.
And we've all heard of people who are famous, like the BK killer.
BTK.
No, BK.
The Burger King killer.
He was going in there.
He wore the king mask.
Yeah.
Like in the commercials.
And then to rebrand themselves, they started making the commercials to try to lighten the mood. I don't know what's going on with the BK killer.
The BTK broiler.
Like with that, there's more than just him. There's been so many people who are serial killers and who have families who just had no idea that that's what they did.
Yeah.
Zero clue, where they're like, I am so shocked to learn about this. So when people come out and say, like people who are like, I was friends with Michael Jackson, I don't believe it. Like, that doesn't matter. Like, who we are behind closed doors can vary drastically, even with our best friends, even with family members. That can drastically change.
Well, and for me, I'm like, that's for you. Like that. It's like for most of us in these situations with celebrities, we never know them, meet them personally, have any kind of look behind the scene. All we know is all the public stuff. And so I feel like it doesn't ultimately help that much for people to come out and be like, well, I knew this person and we had such and such relationship, because just things, the context and the rules all change kind of when you have a personal relationship with somebody. It doesn't make what they've done okay if it's something really heinous, but I feel like that's for you to figure out. It's like when Louis C.K., all that stuff came out, there were a couple people who were like, look, yeah, I don't approve of what he did, but this guy's been a friend all my life, and I'm going to, if I can help things get better, I'm going to try and do that. And that's a point of view that I can respect, just because it's like, if you have a friend, if you know somebody, if it's your personal life, we've all got something like that, and that's your business. But in terms of the overall argument of like, this is proof that they're innocent of something, no, of course not, because, double lives are so easy to conceal. And it's so easy to not show parts of yourself to people around. And oftentimes people you're really close to, sometimes you hide specific parts of yourself from because you're close to them,
I can speak from personal experience. I don't want to go into too much detail, only because by me talking about it puts other family members of mine on a level of exposure that they don't want, or I'm sure they don't want. But I've had a family member who, on the outside, with anyone he interacted with, presented this very contagious, lovable, energetic personality that just seems so kind. but I've experienced firsthand and witnessed to the way this person would treat others in a home environment at this strong level of abuse. Very, very strong level. And then if I've ever told people, like, well, here's what it was actually like with this person on a consistent basis when we weren't out in public or something, they would go, I would never have thought that. I would never have suspected that. And with this person,
how long was this going on?
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, this is just part of it. And for me, like what you're talking about is like that's their personal thing of how they choose to feel or believe. You know, I feel like that kind of went hand in hand, or just on a very personal level, with what happened with Mel Gibson. And I think that's why I'm not free of being the kind of person who's like, you know, like, oh, they've done something bad and they should be condemned, and I'm there going, well, let's forgive them. You know, I've been that guy. And,
well, I think the case by caseness of all this makes it hard to have a bottom line attitude.
Well, and I think with Mel specifically, that's why, because a lot of like the phone calls and the behaviors, that to me, I was firsthand witness with someone in my family on a consistent basis, and because of that, I'm like, well, he was the person in my family was more than that.
You can see the humanity through that kind of situation.
Yeah.
You can fathom who the human around that might be.
That doesn't make what my family member did right. Doesn't make what Mel Gibson did right or something.
But it's part of the nuance of life.
But on my personal, subjective level, on a subconscious level too, I found myself like, you know, like the acts of anger, like Christian Bale ranting on set, you know, like things like that. That's my personal thing where I would find myself being like, well, I'm sure there's more to that, you know, which some people might not call. I'm just being honest. Like that's just where I would come from on a layer like that. It's kind of it's a touchy subject to talk about because I'm also trying to like conceal certain things, without putting other people on the line. So yeah, I do. I get that, and so when people come forward for other people for forgiveness, you know, but for me, it doesn't seem to be that in other areas. What we've dealt with a lot with celebrities lately has been acts of abusing power and sexual abuse, and it seems like people are just so. Our love for a celebrity can cloud the action, you know.
Well, and too, if you step away from the more criminal aspects of this, I mean, there's also the reverse in which, you know, we make these decisions about who we hate and what we disapprove of, you know, based on equally flimsy information or equally flimsy exposure, you know, because it's easy to hold celebrities to impossibly high standards of how we should behave and not be forgiving of understandably human foibles or whatever. Usually not in as high stakes situations as like this person is a serial abuser or whatever. But I do think that this is a fascinating discussion because there are, you know, it's like we'll decide that we hate certain celebrities just cause, you know, and so I don't know, it cuts in both directions to a degree. So it's because we're seeing these people from afar and only through very specific lenses. We're usually seeing things that are either sculpted or leaked, impartial, you know.
I'm not going to also say that there are people who would probably lie about something for fame or lie about being a victim. I'm not going to say that those people don't exist. I think in most of these cases, though, I don't think they're like with the Michael Jackson one, for example.
I just think that whenever these things happen, it's like who would want to drag themselves through that if it wasn't real?
Like, why? You know? Yeah, like why would I can't like for.
This is going to define most of your life from now on. You know,
I'm not a woman, obviously, but for I could speak from the perspective of being a man in an American society. Like that would I don't know of a man who would want to do that. You know, especially when I was hearing about one of those men who already had a flourishing career with dance and choreography, working with some major artists and stuff. Why they would suddenly be like, well, let me just amplify my fame with this. Like why?
Yeah.
Who would do that? It doesn't. What do they have to gain from it? Exactly. People say they just want fame. Like no one's gonna really might put them on not even remember their name in a couple weeks. Like,
yeah, and the kind of fame you get out of that isn't glitz and glamour fame.
Yeah,
it's a geek.
It's like it can be humiliating, and it's so vulnerable. And it's not the kind of fame that is in any way enhancing a positive image, other than the ones who decide to go, "You're being brave."
Yeah,
but like. For me, I haven't been sexually abused like that, but for me, even kind of trying to cloud some of the abuse I've experienced, for me, that's even kind of I get a little bit uncomfortable talking about that, and I don't want to be known as victim guy. So
yeah,
I just
when the experience is relevant and when it matters to share it, like that's the appropriate time, I think. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like you're always going to have people who are accusing those who are speaking out of just doing it for attention or fame. And I think, I don't know, a lot of those people are in denial or can't handle it. I don't know.
Well, that's also the other thing, I think, when you talk to someone who knows the person, like this documentary comes out, they interview a person who knows Michael Jackson. It's a raw time to ask that person. It's like if someone came out and, name any friend, anyone random that we know.
Dan Seibert.
All right. Someone came out and said Dan Seibert sexually abused someone. I'm not saying he hasn't, and at least for I know. I'm going to his weddings. I hope not. So
keeping your pants, Dan.
So if someone said that, and for me to come out and be like, well, I know him, and no, he didn't. Like, well, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. This could go for anyone I know, honestly. Because it could, for me, I feel like I'd be in a form of instant denial because I wouldn't want to believe that because I know this person and I have a connection with this person. So I just simply wouldn't want to believe that. So to get a fucking reporter in your goddamn face about it right away, it's like to get your opinion is kind of silly to me.
Well, and especially as it pertains to these more grave transgressions and stuff, there is a pressure to have an immediate opinion about it, and oftentimes these are complex. At least, I mean, the transgressions are simple enough to condemn, but just the surrounding emotions are strange. And if you're somebody who is intimately involved, you're in a whole other club from the rest of us,
Yeah, exactly. And do I think that there's room for people to grow? There's room for people to change? Yeah. Absolutely. And do I think that forgiveness can be earned in a public sphere? Yes, I do. I do think there's a certain degree of crime, though. Like the fact that Roman Polanski raped a girl and is still making films, he's like, sure, he can't be in America.
Yeah.
But
as far as the rest of the world
has the money and the luxury and the power and the freedom to create and put his films out here in the States, even though he can't enter into the States, he's constantly bringing over big name American actors to where he's at to make a movie. That to me is like too much, that you haven't had the punishment. I've thought about the scenario if someone ever if I can't think of something I've done in my past where someone would come out and be like, Greg did this and cancel Greg or whatever. I can't think of there are people who I've definitely probably have done emotional harm to. Absolutely. I feel like all of us most likely have. If you've lived any kind of real social life, you probably have. But if someone came out to me and said that, my reaction, for example, there one time there was a girl who was married who would come. I don't know if she's still married, but she's come on the channel and she would we're cool now. We're actually great now. But she did admit to me that I would make certain, especially when going my Ryan right, I would make certain jokes that would make people that made her uncomfortable, and she had to tell me that, and I didn't go I didn't get defensive. I simply, I mean, I was talking, you were there with me when I got the message. And I just simply told her, like, I'm really sorry. You know, I own up to that. This is like, I really didn't intend to do that. It was like, I didn't realize my jokes were making you that uncomfortable. So I worked on that, changed that. I don't do that with anyone else now, you know, like, so I made sure. So this was a long time ago. And so I made sure to change that behavior. But I've also thought about the scenario. If someone were to come out about me, I would think, especially if I'm a super famous person and I'm having all this fame and glory and you're seeing my face pop up on billboards, advertisements, the internet, you're seeing me, the person who inflicted harm onto you, created trauma, appearing in your spectrum without you wanting me to,
and being elevated
exactly
by people around.
And then if you were to come out and say something about me, I feel like I would probably have sympathy for you and be like, "Well, I'm sorry, and you're right." Because how is it fair if I'm, you know, having all the glory and you have to be witness to me and you're living with all this trauma that hasn't been resolved, and every time you see me it's a trigger.
Yeah.
You know? Like, yeah, it's not my job to change you. It's not my job to heal you. That's whatever doing you'll have to do. And I probably, whatever harm I inflicted, I'm probably not altogether healthy or wasn't healthy at that time. But that the idea of how we shift to, should they still have a career? But we never focus on the fact that the reason this person spoke out is because they're so fucking traumatized by the shit they went through that we immediately go to is their career going to sustain? Because should they come back? Instead of like, no, the whole point of all this is to focus on these people are traumatized and they're speaking out now. And the whole point is to heal and let other people feel comfortable to identify and have a voice as well, so they can heal too.
Yeah, well, in all of this,
Sorry,
I mean,
I took like 5 minutes on that. I'm
no,
sorry.
no, you're good, you're good, you're good. This is what podcasts are for. To me, see, I again, seeing it from both angles, the way that we can be overly forgiving of people whose work we admire and people who, you know, whose presence at least is important to us, and we can also be overly harsh and critical towards these people. All this has kind of brought me to a place where it's just made me want to stop idolizing people so much. And I was getting tired of this already. It's like, not that she's done anything terrible to my knowledge, but, you know, it's like when Jennifer Lawrence really started to blow up and she was like a culture meme and everyone's just like, oh, I fucking love her so much. And, you know, people get ravenous about celebrities that they like, and that creates just... To me, it creates a whiplash, because if something happens, you have so much further to fall when you put somebody up on a pedestal and you just think they're the greatest thing. And so all of this, you know, the good, the bad, and the, you know, unnecessary has all sort of led me to this place where now I admire certain people's work, I admire certain people's philosophies, and there are certainly celebrities that I like and that I follow, but I've really made an effort now to try and let go of that idolization, that intense enthusiasm, that memification even of certain people, and to try and remind myself that, okay, everyone is probably, you know, for the most part, everybody is just as mundane and disappointing and exciting and fascinating as everybody else is. And even though I only see certain amounts of people when they're doing the extraordinary thing they do, acting in a movie, playing music on stage, whatever it is, most of their life is just spent not doing that, being themselves, you know, working day in and day out on things. And so, yeah, I feel like maybe some of these things can get better the less we do elevate people to a godlike status and create this conundrum for ourselves when that comes called into question, or when people just do things that are human and imperfect too, because I think that's also a lower stakes aspect of this, is just human imperfections often get called into question in a way that we would never do to each other just as friends or, you know, in our daily lives. You know, I feel like you approach people you know intimately with a lot more nuance and understanding than a celebrity you see from afar from whom you expect one type of thing, you know.
You know what's really getting on my nerves?
What's that?
Comedians. Comedians who like feel like there shouldn't be a line, and B, comedians who are instantly like wanting to go and defend their comedic friend who did something fucked up, you know?
Yeah.
I'm hearing a lot more comedians coming forward with Louis C.K., you know? of like, you guys don't think he suffered? He lost $30 million. He lost his shows. He lost all these things. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. I do. But then when you're following it up with a defense for the act, like I've heard several comedians come forward and say and defend even the actions that he did, saying there was more to the story than that. There was a lot of flirting going on leading up to that and everything. Like they're defending the action now, and I think like these are some major comedians. If you guys follow enough of these comedians' podcasts, you'll hear them.
Yeah,
and there's just, you see, I started off with talking about if you've made it this far into my weird stream of consciousness of thoughts that are not fully cohesive. 21 minutes into here, I start off with talking about when people come forward and say, I was close with this person and they didn't demonstrate any of that because they have a connection with them and they don't want to believe it. I started off with that because that's exactly what we do as fans and admirers of people's artistic work in film or music or what have you. Because like with Harvey Weinstein, no one was like, Harvey didn't do it, because he's a producer. He's behind the camera. It's specifically for, like Bryan Singer even, like there's a certain degree there where that's rude.
On Earth?
There's a certain, but when you're an actor or a musician, we have a connection.
When your emotional expression is part of why we know you.
Exactly. When I watch a movie of someone who's on screen, I am connected with that artist. I have formed a connection with that person, and because of that, we instantly don't want to believe that they're capable of doing that thing. We want to forgive them, because we're like the people who go, I'm friends with this person because I had a connection with them. And as fans, it's what we do with these actors and whatever.
Yeah, because that's the thing, is we have partial evidence and your brain is immediately going to go to that, and that's why it's always kind of a bad position to be in, because as an audience member, you just don't have anywhere near the full picture. You have the best parts of the picture. You have the parts that are intended to get to you, and they're not the complete story. So yeah, when something truly bad happens, I don't feel like we all really have as much room to comment necessarily as we think we do. Like, I feel like you can approve or disapprove and kind of state your reason as to why, but people will just take this ownership as though they intimately, just because you're attached to somebody, it is almost as if now they're an intimate family member to you, and they're not, know, and you are not in that same position that somebody who has known this person for 20 years and is having to deal with this is.
I'm sure there's always more to a story, of course. There's always more to a story.
And few people are 100% bad. It's just that some things that people
Except for
do.
Dan Seibert.
He is a terrible, terrible
Dan
man.
Seibert.
Don't trust him.
Don't trust him. He's an asshole. I can't wait to be a groomsman at his wedding.
Just so I can object.
I object. You guys have no idea what this guy's done.
Let me lay it on you now. I could have done this a lot sooner and saved us all the trip, but I needed to take a platform.
I feel like, what more is there? Like, we've talked about art versus the artist and such, and it's a case-by-case scenario for so many of these people.
I think you should always at least a little bit separate the art from the artist, even the art and artists that you really like and aren't problematic. There should always be a line there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Where would you conclude this, John?
I don't know. I feel like we've kind of touched on this issue as much as we need to.
Truthfully, I feel like I'm a little all over the place, and I'm not exactly aligned with my thoughts on this, is because like, this is a very exhausting topic by this point. Like, when we did the art versus the artist podcast, I was very like, and then here, it's a little bit more of an in-depth version of the forgiveness angle, and it's exhausting because what we do, we're exposed to like more people who don't do what we do are constantly exposed to social media, probably even more so. Because and it's just like opinion upon opinion upon opinion, and at the end of the day, I'm like, we're all allowed to have our opinions. It's when we're trying to control the situation or maneuver the direction of an outcome when it's not our place.
Yeah. We're not involved really.
Like we all have our opinions. But
it matters to your friends and family what you think of one of these situations because it just tells them about your character. But it ultimately doesn't really matter that much that we all comment on Louis C.K. I mean, don't maybe support his comedy now, but
the Johnny Depp Amber Heard situation was one of a fucking exhaustion for me because, I dealing with people on Twitter about it who want to send me these case files and stuff, and I'm like, if you guys really believe there's more to the story, then you'll know that in so many big profile cases, just look at our president, for example, who's getting bottom line, all right?
He's on tape.
He's on tape.
He's said it. He's said things that we would cancel regular celebrities for in a heartbeat.
So many things that have just proven he's done illegal or morally corrupt things. And yet he's still president, okay? And so like with the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, do I know for sure what happened? No, I don't. And honestly, neither do any of you. And that's between them. We can all have an opinion of, I thought Johnny Depp did it. I don't think Johnny Depp actually did it. I think Amber Heard's fucked up. I think Amber Heard's brave. We can all have that opinion, but we're trying to fucking create the movement.
We put those people on probation.
Guys, just let them deal with it. Let them handle it.
Let them conclude the situation, and then we'll figure out what to do when that happens.
Yeah.
Because it isn't. Yeah, the court of public opinion is a weird place to be because there's no real judge of public opinion.
Yeah.
It just is it's just a outer cloud around this nucleus.
For all I know, Johnny Depp could, and the funny thing is, I know people who actually know Johnny Depp, and who are obviously on his side because they know Johnny Depp, and I'm not gonna bother to waste a breath arguing with them about the situation. And the thing is, with that, I'm like, well, maybe you pondered. He's a very wealthy guy. Maybe they paid off a lot of different situations in this area, and maybe he didn't.
And I don't know if I'm ever gonna know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to decide what really goes on here on out. I think it's kind of messed up on the Amber Heard spectrum when an ex-girlfriend of hers comes forward and is like, she was abusive to me, and goes, see, she's the really abusive one. Well, I'm like, but why are you taking her word?
Duly noted, character reports are a thing, but at the same time, it's not the be-all, end-all of the argument.
Where's that ex's crazy evidence for you, or is it just for you to help you go, see, I still can love Johnny Depp? And the thing is, for that, I'm at the point where I'm like, yeah, maybe he did, maybe he did.
I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I imagine something in most of these situations. I imagine something happened.
I've heard reports where she's done some messed up stuff. Honestly, my honest conclusion, my opinion on it would flat out just be, I have a strong impression they were both pretty abusive to each other.
Yeah, that's the sense I get.
Does it make him hitting her okay? Does it make the report that showed that he cut his finger okay? No. They were both probably pretty abusive to each other, and that's between them, and sometimes the relationships bring out the worst in one another. If he's not fucked up to anyone else and she's not fucked up to anyone else, then maybe we can just move forward.
Yeah, and if you're uncomfortable with what we know now, you just don't have to support either one of them. And yeah, I mean that's the ultimate thing is we all think that we know and we hear parts of a story, and just the thing that flummoxes me the most is when you see something like the Michael Jackson documentary, and you have people who just won't even entertain the idea that, that example that everybody has harped on, like the idea that a grown man having children in his bed at all is kind of strange, and people will even go so far into denial to pretend like all that is fine, and when we get to that point, that's when I start to get concerned and worried because it seems like willful ignorance.
The Michael Jackson thing was when I heard about this documentary, when all these things are coming out on Twitter, at least when I first heard about it, before I looked into what all the detailed accounts were. When I first heard it, I was like, Michael Jackson a pedophile? This is news? I thought we already concluded that, and for some reason forgave it. You know, like there was so many things that I grew up in the '90s just thinking like, oh, he's that famous singer that for some reason we let him get away with these things.
Yeah,
you know?
I feel like they didn't find anything of great conclusive, quality at Neverland, and so we all just kind of went.
When these sexual abuse cases, it's super hard to find.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult.
Because most of the time it's an act between two people in an isolated place where there's no witnesses and no evidence.
When you want to just go innocent until proven guilty, I'm like, it's very fucking hard to, like, prove that.
I think innocent until proven guilty is very...
it's an abuse term.
Well,
honestly,
it's a poor term because it's oversimplified. I get it. I get the point that we shouldn't just go, well, there's a suspicion you're guilty, but at the same time, we shouldn't go, well, there's no proof that you're guilty, so you're innocent. It should be like on probation until we find out what the hell happened here. And for me, my attitude on these things has sort of become, where there's smoke, at very least, I know there's smoke. And for some reason, there's got to be smoke, whether it's a fire or not a fire. I know that there's smoke, and I'm breathing it in now, so I'm aware that there's an issue at the very least. And whether or not I get a conclusion as to where that smoke came from, again, as we touched on in the last podcast on this topic, it's like those things just take root in my mind. Yeah. And so afterwards, I'm just aware of them, and, you decide kind of based on that. But I wish people, would be at least a little more open to the idea of going, I don't know exactly what happened. We haven't reached a conclusion. But yes, it seems as though something less than average, normal, pleasant is happening here, Because that's the truly scary thing about this is when people just deny it. It is unfathomable that anything bad could have happened at all,
Yeah, I mean, if you choose to... I get more upset at the people who keep getting work when something's wrong. Like if you're someone who like wants to keep watching Roman Polanski's old films before all this stuff came out, or that's not an exhibitive example. If you want to keep listening to Louis C.K.'s old stand-up comedy routines, I'm not going to argue with you. Like, okay, fine, go ahead, listen to it. What upsets me more, like the thing that upsets me more, is people who keep hiring. Like I heard Bryan Singer was released from Red Sonja. At least that's what I heard.
Finally, yeah.
But the thing is, the fact that they hired him,
and for a minute we're like, no, we're making this, man.
Exactly.
We want Bryan Singer.
After all that, they're the ones I actually get the most upset at. The ones who are still employing these people. That's when I get pissed. If you want to keep watching their work that's already out there. That's a whole other subject. I just totally burped in the mic. That's a whole other subject. That's where, because
it's another topic because it already exists. It's already been supported theoretically. If you own it, you own it.
The gray area that happens a lot of this is like, well, are we gonna condemn someone for how they were in a one-on-one, personal, private, boyfriend girlfriend marriage situation? But because it's not the same as looking at how someone abuses power with sexual abuse and all those areas, like a Harvey Weinstein or a Louis C.K. That's different, and that doesn't minimize any of the harmful negative effects that a person does in a relationship per se. However, it is a different territory as opposed to
there's a difference between being kind of a shitty person but not doing anything truly criminal and being a shitty person and a criminal.
That's why I'm saying
when you should be in jail for the thing that you did rather than just, oh, that's an ugly situation.
Like with the Chris Hardwick or the Johnny Depp, those situations, and when people come forward and be like, Chris Hardwick, I know him, he's a good guy. Or Johnny Depp, I know him, he's a good guy. Amber Heard, I know her. I'm like, well, that doesn't matter because
it's not that relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, okay, cool. I liked him before all this already, and I got these senses. But the new thing to me is the relationship that you weren't a part of.
Because with a relationship, it could be totally different. You could be like the nicest person and truly a great human being to strangers, everyone you work with, your best friend, all your family members. But in your relationship, it's fucked up. So it doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah.
And it's up to us to decide whether the weight of how they are in that relationship, like the Chris Hardwick stuff. I mean, reading that, that was something that I'm like, oh, I don't know about this. Even though people are coming to his defense, and they investigated and I'm like, what fucking investigation went on?
Yeah,
really properly conclude this,
Yeah, totally. And like Chris Hardwick, Johnny Depp, I feel like those are ones that are more left, or even Aziz Ansari are more left to us. Because, those aren't necessarily criminal acts, but they are unsavory, and they are not the kind of conduct you would hold a friend to. It's not something you would want somebody to demonstrate toward you.
You said the word criminal, and I feel like a lot of us come down to that, because that's where the whole innocent until proven guilty thing comes down to, is the criminal act. But we got to think about morally corrupt things, too.
Yeah.
We got to think about the moral. That's why I think the word progressive is really being thrown out there a lot, and that's an important element of being progressive. Because that's more than money and law and whatever. It's about who we are as human beings.
Yeah,
that's
progressing
just
our
as
society.
Important,
Yeah.
Beyond that, so yeah, Sorry, I'm obviously exhausted from this, and I'm supposed to be going to WonderCon. I have to leave for WonderCon in like 30 minutes to go to movie fights.
Yeah.
And the thought of like my thoughts aren't exactly sharp right now is kind of worrying me. But I know it's also a very different topic as opposed to a movie fight. So,
yeah. So I don't know. Any
Anyway.
parting words? Cancel everyone. No more celebrities.
Yeah.
Just art. No artists.
Let me ask you this. If you found out that a person who was a sexually abusive pervert was your waiter at a restaurant, would you want them to be your waiter at the restaurant?
Yeah.
You know? But for some reason, a famous actor, that's different. That's a more important thing, when really it's just a job.
Well, and that's the double-edged sword of being removed, because I think that is a good question. Yeah, it's like, if I actually had to be in a room with this person, though, then how would I feel?
Yeah.
Because it's really easy for me to never meet them and just rent a movie.
I love the actor and director that is Mel Gibson, but honestly, the thought of being alone with him in a room kind of terrifies me.
Yeah.
I'm like, what if I just say the wrong thing and he just like fucking unloads on me,
Yeah. Well, and I don't know exactly what the right answer is about Mel Gibson specifically, but I think there are some problematic people out there for whom you can say, yeah, I wouldn't want to meet or spend time with this person, but I do recognize the quality in their work, and I can separate the two of them, and I am not, the way I consume their thing isn't actively helping to destroy anything or whatever. Or if you have to, you can offset your... It's like, I think if you, just got to go see a Mel Gibson joint and you feel conflicted, well, donate to something that is in the interest of, helping domestic violence or things like that. I don't know. I feel like we're all figuring out as a newly informed and a newly connected society what we're supposed to do in these situations, and I also feel like we ought to maybe stop attacking each other quite so hard as we figure out what to do about these things.
Yeah, I mean, we're not gonna. I don't see in our time, what's the word for it? I feel like internally I'm an idealist, and I don't think in our time on this planet we will see a time where communication is that good. I don't think in our lifetime we will.
No.
I'd like to keep working towards it. I'd like to be a part of the group that works towards that, though.
Yeah.
Because
get as many people down for that cause as possible.
I feel like social media, like people say, like, oh, social media has ruined us, and I'm like,
it has changed us.
It's always sort of been that way. It's always been that way,
It's just changed the scope.
Now everyone can just put their voice out there a little more evidently now.
Yeah.
Then that's about it. But
there's a place for all these thoughts.
It's not like social media happened and then we turned into this person. It's just the people
just pulled the curtain back.
That's all it did. Yeah.
It just allowed a platform for all the things we weren't saying before, and all the things that we would have to save up to the point where we were on the phone with or in the room with somebody.
I guess it worries me of how the youth respond to this, and how the youth feel influenced and inclined and feel like they can behave a certain way, because for us to have this perception of, man, this is weird and fucked up, the youth growing up in this, this is normal and acceptable and okay. When like it's not. So yeah.
Well, and the youth too. The youth speaking like old fogies here.
Well,
but
when I say I mean
no,
like the influential brain of the young kids. Yeah,
But the flip side of that is that we have seen more young people, like people who aren't even of voting age now more than ever, are at least taking an interest in current events in society, and at least taking some sort of stand earlier than I feel like we would have without all this connectivity. So there is, I think, hope, at least for some of this. Yep. Yeah, there you go. Because it's hard. It's always going to be an issue of who you grew up around, where you got your education from, how much education you got, what experiences you've had with people who aren't like you, There's always going to be a million factors.
Anyway, guys, who do you forgive?
Who do you forgive, and who have you canceled?
Subscribe to the Reject Nation. Click that notification bell. Most people probably haven't made it to this far.
But if you did, you win a prize.
Yeah.
So we'll let you know.
See you guys.
Peace.